All right, guys. So some of you wanted videos on design and others wanted hard surface sculpting. So this one is going to be an Unleash video. We're just going to hang out here and play around in a couple different softwares. We'll be messing around in Krita. We'll be doing Blender, of course, mostly. And then we'll check out some basic ideas of working with models in Substance 3D Modeler as well. Now, so it's going to be all over the map, basically. That's why it's an Unleashed video. It's not a tutorial or anything like that necessarily. But over here in Krita, I want to kind of update you guys on something I was trying to figure out how to do, and I actually figured out how to do it. I think it's something that might be up some of your guys' alley where it'll be useful info for you anyways. But a lot of times I recommend sketching and drawing, right? And when you're doing designs, it's not about creating art. It's about creating the thing, right? And so when you, let's start that over. Let's say we just create like a polygonal shape, all right? Any kind of polygonal shape for now is going to work for this demo, but basically we can use line tools. So when you're using a regular brush, you hold V, you can use a line tool. It's that simple in Krita. Or you can press, I forgot what the shortcut was. I set it to a custom shortcut, but for the line tool, show preview, turn it off. It doesn't really help much. And, but we get this going. So I was explaining in some of those design videos that like these surfaces you can round out, right? And this is what's going to start building up interest to your shapes a lot of times. And you need to practice this kind of idea of either doing squares, rectangles, triangles, circles, and practicing breaking them up at different ratios to create more interest with them. And then breaking up edges and creating different silhouettes here. And then start setting up the idea of areas where you can add extra details, perhaps. Like this, right? So we can make some kind of little circular detail in there or something like that, right? So practice that, just breaking up basic primitive shapes, then start creating these polygonal shapes like this. And really what these are is they're compound shapes or clusters, if you want to think of them like that, where you're going through and you're just doing this number, right? And you're adding shapes with shapes. This is maybe like a way of looking at it as creating a compound shape or maybe a cluster of shapes. There's other methods, of course, like you could do intersecting as well. So it's really up to you. And then trying to make these look aesthetically pleasing. It's actually more challenging than you probably realize if you've never really done it before. So super useful, though. Great exercise and practice to start doing this and keep it simple at first, right? When you make something like this, you can actually kind of combine shapes as well and get some interest out of them that way, or around the corners. So any polygonal shape, you can round the corners. You can round them at different rates. It gives you kind of different looks, right? So you can always try things like that. And if you want to lay in different kind of ideas of what you might do in the center, you can use grids and whatnot, right? So if you had like perfect grids, be something like this maybe. But a lot of times it's more based off of the other elements on how you're going to create interest across something, right? So having a detail here, center aligned, might be useful. Or you could do like offset on this side, right? Or maybe put it right in the middle of these two at the bottom there. So you can play around with these ideas as well, and like how big this thing needs to be. And start figuring out what works for something like this. And a lot of times the simpler you keep it, the better. So like breaking things up into thirds overall can be really useful as well to kind of get an idea of what you're trying to do. And this is just, you know, things that you're going to play around with, and you'll start learning more and more things you can do with this, right? Now, also you break them up. You can break them up in cool, interesting ways. So if I want to do something like that, I could. I could send it out to the back here. I can make it like come out to the back right here. Somewhere like this. See how that goes? So that's kind of something you could do maybe. But we can do like those converging, or like, let me turn that eraser off. Let's line go right through the center here. And we could do things like this too. So always keep that in mind. Like we can cut down a little here, send it out this way, block it out instead of doing a perfectly sharp little corner there. Send it back out this way. This kind of stuff can be fun, right? Like we can we can really play around with this like it's graphic design or font design, and start creating patterns and rhythms and stuff like that as well. And these don't have to be straight either. They can just be like curves as well. You see? And we can play around doing the inverse. See what I'm saying? How big these are rounded here. If this is all curved in this area, this would have to curve maybe as well. So you got to change those edges sometimes, right? I think it's already kind of curved. So anyways, these are the ideas we play around with. Like how we break these things up can be a critical part of all of this, and what it's going to end up looking like anyways. But this is like primary, secondary shapes right now. We haven't done really tertiary details. So lots of little cutouts we can create, additional little elements, and all kinds of just fun stuff like that, right? Now, in 3D, this is way more fun in some ways. Because first of all, we have symmetry, and we don't have to do everything by hand, and flat side views. We got 3 dimensions we work with now. So we don't have to worry about like perspective drawing necessarily either. The reason we're in Substance Modeler is because I just wanted to go over some really basic concepts here without worrying about booleans yet. So if we create a cubic shape, now creating variation or shape variation is like a design fundamental. There's lots of design fundamentals that you need to learn. But in Blender, whenever you do a bevel, a lot of times you're just doing all the edges at the same time. And this is kind of boring sometimes, right? And you'll notice here we got different sliders. So like I can round these corners heavily and then do a, let's say like a chamfer, right? So we could do this kind of stuff in Blender too, sure. But usually if you're doing it non-destructively, you got to set up like 2 different bevel modifiers and use weighted bevels. And if you wanted to bevel the fillet, or excuse me, bevel the chamfer, you would see we got a slider here for that now here in Substance 3D Modeler. So this is way easier to do over here than Blender. So it's 3 sliders, not 3 modifiers, and you got to set them up and all that and tag edges and stuff. So it's really good for design in some respects. You do lose some control though, because it's, you know, it's a destructive clay system with the default clay setup, and unless you're using a shape primitives, which is actually a assigned distance function, non-destructive way of working, which is great. But this is the main idea. We create a basic shape, and we start thinking about, you know, the way we would do rectangles when we're breaking them up. All right. And so that same process continues now, similar to what we would do when we're drawing, but we're looking at just the side of it right now. Let me just turn all these down. Okay. And the way you have to do it over here, it's very kind of dependent on the cuts you want to make first usually, but you'll see here, if I do a split, we can split it into multiple objects now. So there's one. And that proportion, or the way we would do those edges or lines when we're drawing it, still plays a role over here, right? So, whoops, what are we doing here? Why is this not working? I might have not had it selected the way it needed to be. Let's redo that. Okay. Let's just use a big cube for it. There we go. That's what I was expecting. We'll do one here. All right. And just with a couple lines in it, you start seeing where this is going now, right? It's way more interesting this way. You can imagine turning this into like some kind of health pack or crate or whatever you want to turn it into. Just with a little edge variation, it's still a rectangle more or less, right? This is where a lot of guys are going to struggle, because really trying to do all this in Blender with polygons is pretty challenging. It's not always the smoothest thing necessarily. So like we want this surface over here pushed in, right? And it's a little hard to do here, and well, we can just completely subtract it maybe. But if we split it, we have this shape now. We could just pull it in a little bit maybe. You see? And then we can take these two, hit Control E, it merges them. And then we get this going on. Now we get to think about things like values as well, or materials, and also lighting possibly. You got to remember, if we have like harsh contrasted light, like direct lighting, we get shadows in areas, and those create more or less like dark areas that can be interpreted by an observer, like somebody looking at the object that you created under certain lighting. It could create negative spaces, but so could materials, right? So the lighting or the materials can do this. And so if I change this whole bottom section here to a much darker material, right, it starts to feel like more like a recessed area, perhaps. It's almost the equivalent of just having this pushed in like this, but it's still flat, so the silhouette doesn't break up. But it's something that's just, you got to think about when working with certain designs, right? Like the materials are made out of, the color scheming, the lighting, things like that, super important. You think about architects, for example. Architecture, one of the first things that architects do when they're planning out a new location is they get an idea of what the sun does, the solar cycle, right? So that way, when they're creating their buildings, they're thinking about how those shadows will cast into the recesses of the buildings, like entranceways and things like that, and whether it's going to be dark in that area and create kind of this effect here. And that's important to understand. It really is. So with a couple more cuts in here, we get to start thinking about balancing everything out, basically. Right? And I might want to turn a little symmetry on here and do a little bit of a rounding, maybe a little bit of fillet too. Why not? And let's try that again. Why did that not go away? Go away. All right. We'll just do rounding, I think, and push it in however far we need it to go. Spacebar. You can see we're using basically vertex colors right now, so I'll constantly have to keep recoloring them as we work this way. But now you're starting to see the potential of this idea of breaking up something as simple as a cube or a rectangle. All right, now doing this in Blender is a different story. It's not that easy necessarily, right? It's with hard ops, it's kind of this easy. I'm gonna hold spacebar and drag this to the right, and I'll just finish out that cut there to that other piece. See? So let's go over to Blender. And so this shape here, I want to mention something. When you scale something in object mode, say we didn't want to mess around in edit mode a little bit, we get non-uniform scale if the numbers don't match. So if we add a bevel, we add the segment counts up. It doesn't bevel correctly the way you would expect it to anyways. So remember, non-uniform scale, Control A, apply scale. That's what you want. If you have hard ops, this isn't an issue. When you hit Q and you do a bevel, it resets the scale. You'll see it actually goes from non-uniform and it ones it out. So it's anticipating that happening, so it actually does it for you, which is kind of cool. But what if we wanted that kind of same chamfered effect on a cube like this, right? Well, we could go through and we can bevel all these edges first, and we can do it destructively, which is fine. I mean, there's not necessarily wrong with this. But if we end up wanting to use a remesh workflow and we're planning on remeshing this to high resolution and sculpting on it or something like that, sometimes this is a problem because they're not high enough resolution and then you can't smooth it down very well, or it doesn't smooth out very well. And so we can do this non-destructively. And this is where it's kind of fun here. So I think we're all aware that we have edge creasing, which is usually Shift-E. But you can also change edge bevel weight to Control Shift-E, which works really well. So you can add bevel weights, and you can adjust them as well this way without having to use the N panel necessarily. But you can press N, bring this out, and say edge bevel weights, and tag them to 1 for now. So if we add a bevel, right, regular bevel, you're going to want to switch it to weight. All right, and that's going to only bevel those. All right, you might need to apply scale still. With hard ops, we can hit Q, bevel, like we normally would, set it however you want, and then hit L. Okay, and that's going to do that like that. Super useful. Followed up by this, you can do another bevel. Just leave it one segment. You can do the chamfer. If you want to bevel it again, you can. All right, but you might have to change the angle amount. It might get a little weird at this point. But you can do these kinds of things, right? Now, the only difference here, the big thing, I think, is what makes this a little bit more fun to do it over here. Because it's all voxels here. And So if I like reduce the resolution, increase the resolution a bit, everything rounds out, right? If I do a boolean into this, I shift right click here, shift A, create a cube. And I'm going to use either hard ops or box or bool tools. Grab, shift grab, control shift B. We can do non-destructive brush booleans. We can do difference, or destructive ones up here with auto boolean with control shift B. Now, or we could use the shortcuts, and hard ops will kind of overwrite the shortcut there basically. So it's going to use hard ops instead. Now, so we can also, once again, bevel this piece. We can do this number. But the problem we end up with is, well, yeah, these areas here, trying to bevel this can sometimes be very problematic. So if I put this boolean slightly below that other bevel, it does work. Don't worry about the shading yet, because this actually, when you do it later, you'll shade it more than likely smooth. And then you'll add a weighted normal modifier. It actually cleans that up. So it's not super important right away. But yeah, so we can do bevels on these things, right? If we don't have a lot of intersections occurring, because we got to worry about all the edges, right? Because the edges, if this was up here, you see how it gets kind of weird? It's almost like the bevel no longer exists. This is what you're running into a problem with a lot of times, is that you have to have geo matching up with geo in order for it to work better, basically. Where they're all merged together and have proper wireframes and all that. Let's not worry about that just yet, right? Like, we're not doing a topo video, but that's what's occurring. And so it's a little bit frustrating, because if you had like a cylinder shape right here and it had to cut out into that surface, you can't really do that, right? Like, it's going to kill off that. Well, if you wanted to bevel anyways, it would kill off. It still works surprisingly in this case. A lot of times that'll kill off these shapes like this, or the bevels like that, the bevel modifier anyways. So you end up leaving this bevel a little bit higher, okay? And I turn auto sort off for this reason, so I can have more control over this. But usually you leave it a little bit higher, and then you just get sharp edges everywhere. And the goal is to, well, at some point you shift D it, duplicate it, right click again, convert it to a mesh. Now you have a destructive version. You can go back and can clean up things if you need to. If you did proper kind of shapes here to do the booleans, you'll have an easier time cleaning it up as well. But like, a lot of this stuff here needs to get worked out, basically. Okay, you can see I can't really loop cut through here. It's hard to work with. So I got to use C, use the cursor selector, get in here. And it's not that much fun, right? So Shift H that. I can now get in the side view. KCA. Cut through, space bar, Alt H, bring it back, and we do just cut in there. Okay. If I GG twice this, I can slide it. I can hit E and make it even with this edge. All right. And then these ones we could just move around a little bit now, if we needed to. Unfortunately, this one over here has nothing to connect to. And this is why you need to think about segment counts when you're doing bevels or cylinders in particular, and also spheres. So just keep that in mind. You want to be able to have things to attach things to things, right? And so this is where this all runs to. It's, you know, designing in Blender is a lot more challenging for this reason. Now, if you just said, you know, to heck with it, I don't care what happens with this, as far as topology goes, you don't have to clean it up. You could remesh things, right? Let's remesh. Use a remesh modifier. We crank it down pretty far. Hold shift while dragging it. All right. And now you hit smooth on it. Let's do 5 for now. And it doesn't really smooth it out all that well, right? It's kind of, maybe it's working. Let's do 55 or, whoa, too many. 55. Okay. To round this area out now, really challenging to do, right? Because it was too low resolution, basically. So there are ways to do this. You can convert to a mesh. We didn't have this bevel here, and we went to sculpt mode. We can initialize face sets by normals. Okay. Click and drag to the right, hold shift while doing so. We can break these things up. You can see it does work with the bevels sometimes, but usually causes more problems than it helps. A lot of times it'll split it up in weird ways on that. In our case, it worked. But when we create face sets this way, we can now auto mask by face sets, face set boundaries. We can use mesh filter. We can set it to smooth. So if we want to go to voxels, we can hit R. We can remesh. We can bring it up. Control R. You don't have to bring it up too dense, but just well enough it holds the shapes and forms and all that. Mesh filter is set to smooth. We're locked up the boundaries of these face sets, and you can see over here, right? So I can click and drag to the right now and smooth all this out. Now the only downside is you can see it's working on only that one face set, but sometimes these will stay pinched like this. So it's also sometimes useful to uncheck that one and just use the face set and do each of them individually. On the flip side of this, you can also maybe just use face set boundary and do all of them at the same time, but you'll get the pinch point again. Unfortunately, that's so you might do like a little bit, right? Then you might remesh it again, maybe a little higher or lower, and then you just keep kind of smoothing it down. Make it lower resolution, smooth it a little bit until we kind of work those poles out, basically, is what we're trying to do. The little poles. And so it doesn't work out too well. I mean, it could possibly work, but this is where that non-destructive setup comes into play. So guys are creating 3D models this way, non-destructively, or semi-non-destructively at least, where they're thinking about converting these more or less what's a low poly model, or like almost like a mid poly model. And by mid poly, I mean like it's not super optimized. It's got bevels on it and stuff. A lot of game models, they tend to have sharp edges and things. But they kind of create these models in this manner. And then, you know, if you do it in a more non-destructive manner, whoops, that was the wrong one. We want the first one. We don't have to smooth it as much when we do this number, right? That's kind of the key here. And so we could also maybe remove the other bevel, or we don't have to remove it technically. We just turn it off, right? If I can get the right one here. See? So now I can Shift D, duplicate, bring it out. Ah, this is more like it. And also Quad Remesher likes this more as well if you want to try using Quad Remesher. Just to give you a quick idea on how this works if it doesn't have issue right now. Normal splitting for this, shade it auto smooth. If it's symmetrical, use symmetry. I like to turn adapt off, that's personal. Change the quad counts to whatever you need that support the shape. And you can get decent little quad remeshes out of this, although it's not perfect topology. It is technically a subdivision mesh. I mean, you could possibly bake this. When you right-click Shade Smooth, you can remove all sharps by unchecking that. If you wanted to. If you wanted to keep the sharps, you could possibly take them, grab them, Shift-G, grab one, Shift-G, select by sharpness, and you might be able to get away with like beveling these as well. Although this one's a little bit goofy going up to that edge, but Control-B, mouse wheel up once. You got your 3 holding edges on it now. It doesn't mean it worked out everywhere because we probably had issues in some areas. So before you do that, you clean it up. But just giving you some ideas here to work with that you might be able to run with anyways. And this is kind of fun because a lot of times for a subdivision workflow, you need cleaner mesh than this. This isn't technically correct, but you would do a higher resolution mesh at some point like this, possibly. And you can use these elements later on. So like this one here, actually, before we go that far, let's do select loops, boundary loops. Right here, I'm going to bevel this a tiny bit. Mouse wheel up once, switch to vertex selection, control number pad minus, select less, Alt S, you can bring that in. Now you can do select loops. Instead of doing boundary loop, do loop inner region. P, separate selection. There you go. You got 2 objects now, right? So this is kind of the cool stuff you can do with Sub-D mesh. Like you can work with a non-manifold where it's not solid or anything like that. And we can always go back in here, select loops, alt click that one, select boundary loops. I got that on a shortcut, but it's up there under select. So I can make that edge sharper if needed. I could do that same thing on the inside here because it's a big loop right now. So if you control your mesh and your edge flow, this helps out tremendously. But you can't always get away with it this simple with the quad remeshes usually. But it's just something, you know, to think about, some food for thought. But it's not as extremely, like you don't have a lot of fun working with this sometimes because it's very restrictive in some ways. Like obviously, if we wanted to change this design dramatically, it's going to be kind of hard to do. Not that we can't do it, but it's going to be harder to do more than we probably want it to be. So, And also, like, you imagine trying to select here. Well, yeah, so, we could take both of those objects into edit mode, maybe grab this whole section, press H and hide / to isolate. And now we can get a hold of these a little bit easier, maybe. We can still make edit do this, basically, is what I was trying to get to here. Alt-Z it. But you're going to feel a little bit more restricted because of the grid and everything, right? So a lot of times Subdivision works best if you already have an idea of the thing that you want to create, more or less, is what's going on, right? You want to make sure you have a great idea of what it is you're trying to work on, how you want it to look. And before you start going through the whole process of creating it, because it can be rather involved. Now, it's not to say you can't free model things and come up with cool stuff. You can. It's just, it's a little bit more challenging in some respects, right? Alt-H to bring that back. Just going to take these sections here, see if they work on this over here. Not really, do they? Yeah, this is where you run into issues with quad remesher. Okay. And it'd be hard to split this up potentially. Well, kind of. KCA. It might work out this way, but we might have to clean up that edge too. But if we can get a hold of these now, all the way through the mesh, which can be rather challenging to do. Mesh machine, if you click an edge and alt-click it, you can go all the way through like that. That could be useful. You could probably separate that. And then over here, we probably could do the same, I'm guessing. Ooh, okay. Yeah, we can. Select loop inner regions as well. So now we kind of get in this kind of fun territory where, we can play around with things like this still, even in Subdivision, or excuse me, in Blender. But we don't get that nice little panel line here unless we model it, basically, which you can't always get away with like ES and SZ and scaling it in. Sometimes you can, but a lot of times you can't. And once again, you got to clean edges up. This limits, well, it makes design really hard to do, right? Like, it's not that fun. It's not that interesting. And so it makes it really challenging to design anything kind of fun and easily. When that's the whole reason I ended up purchasing Substance 3D Modeler. I just wanted to play around with the booleans this way for more cubic type shapes in particular. But it does obviously more than that. And now you get to start playing around with like layering elements and doing all kinds of other fun stuff, combining shapes together, splitting them. It's really a fun program. And it's all voxels. Now, it's not to say you can't do voxels in Blender. It has voxels. I don't think they come out quite as nice as Substance Modeler, but it's still very useful for understanding a design that you're trying to create, right? So something like this, we could leave, the bevels on if we wanted to, and take this and duplicate it, right click, convert it to a mesh. Now that we have a base that we can increase the resolution on, right? We can go into sculpt mode. Now we could try establishing face sets if we want, but we don't have to. We press R, bring it up pretty high resolution, and then Control R it, right? And I got wireframes on a shortcut. It's just right here, okay? You can right-click that checkbox and change it to a shortcut. But you can see, like, it's a little bit denser now. And so, as a result, it smooths a little bit easier. So we can hit it with a smooth here. You can actually wait to do this until later. You don't have to do it right away necessarily. But yeah, you can see it smooths out much faster, much easier with, like, you don't do as much smoothing with those bevels on there at higher resolutions, which is nice. Okay. And we use this similar to how we would with Substance 3D Modeler, believe it or not. This program, all of this is destructive. There's no going back on this. Now, that's not to say you always work destructively in Modeler, because you have what's called primitives. And this is sign distance function meshes. So basically, you guys seen the SDF add-on possibly with Blender. It's not getting any updates, though, which would be nice if they did. But until that happens, we don't really use it maybe. But why is this dark gray? What's going on here? Okay. Now, this is non-destructive completely. So if I Control D, duplicate this, pull it out, like we can have one shape intersect with another shape, and it's adding together right now. And then you can also subtract it or carve it, as they call it. You can round corners. You can do all this, and you can blend as well, right? You can blend these shapes. So this is a really cool feature, and ZBrush kind of has something similar to this. Blender has a metaball type thing as well, which is useful, but it's a little harder to control. And it's still, you know, like voxel kind of setup. And anyways, so there's like metaballs, if you've never seen them even here in Blender, they're, well, they're not called metaball. Well, actually, yeah, they're called metaballs. Exactly. I thought they were just called meta mesh or something. Anyways, these have interesting properties to them, but they're a little hard to control sometimes. See if I can remember even the properties for these things. So if I Shift D and duplicate that out, you can see what's going on here. But where their settings are right here. But you can change like the resolution of things is what I was trying to go for there. And then in edit mode, I always forget that it's in edit mode. You can see once you go into edit mode, you have options. And so you can kind of use them similar to a regular kind of SDF setup. Like you can blend them and subtract them and do all kinds of fun stuff like that. But they're a little hard to control over here, right? And it's still based off the voxel system. So I don't bother with this, generally speaking. I just wanted to show it because, you know, Blender is more powerful than I think a lot of people realize. But I like to remesh things like this. And I do booleans still. And I use booleans with destructive booleans anyways. So for example, if I Shift A, create a cube, we'll do it just like we did in Substance now. Okay. I want to split this object. Well, grab this, Shift select this. If you have hard ops, Shift Q, you can do a slash, right? But it's going to do it non-destructive more than likely. All right. Keep that in mind. Click and Shift click, Control Shift B. Bool tools have destructive ones, right? So we can do a slice. So we can quickly slice this. And you'll see it's destructive. It takes a second to calculate, but it does do it. Okay. Now, this is important to do it destructively without previews. So if you're trying to use like box cutter, for example, turn preview off, live preview off, so that it's a destructive. It'll work better this way. It'll do destructive stuff, right? As far as setting hard ops to work destructively, I'm not sure if there's a way, actually, to be honest. I haven't really tried. So yeah, I just use Bool tools. It's easier, I guess, in that sense. But basically, we can go through here now, and we can design, and we can use what I'm using is as well. It's kind of hard to tell, but Blender, the newer versions of Blender will have like the trim tool in sculpt mode, right? We have all these options for it. They use a manifold solver for their booleans. Well, I've set up hard ops, box cutter, and Bool tools to all use manifold solvers. So in preferences, if we look like Bool tool, you can pick which one it uses, right? You got to save your preferences. And that's same is true for like hard ops. If you look up hard ops, actually, we might not change it right here. We'll see if it's in here. It might be in another menu. Active meters, sharps, angles. Yeah, it might be in the other menu. So basically, if you go to hard ops, no, that's not it either. It's over here on the end panel. All right, we're gonna get there. I promise. There's several different areas the menu shows up, but basically, where is it? Right here. Oh, booleans. All right, nope. Opt-in. It's okay. Workflow, maybe. All right, yeah, there it is. Workflow. So non-destructive or destructive, you can set it right here. Sort modifiers on or off, and use manifold. There you go. Manifold's really great, but it has a couple problems. Sometimes it will completely fail to do a boolean for whatever reason. No idea why. It can sometimes distort the mesh. It's pretty rare, but it sometimes will. It'll make like a flat surface not flat anymore for whatever reason. And it tends to be a little bit slower than float, but it's about as precise as exact. So it's got a nice balance, but it only works on solid mesh. You can't use it on non-manifold mesh. Now, the reason why it's so useful is the same reason they added it to the trim tool inside of Blender, right? Is because it doesn't fight with the wireframes lining up with each other as much, right? Like we were seeing earlier, where it kind of collapses that bevel down. Sometimes that would cause Boolean errors as well, where the mesh disappears. It doesn't really do that. So this is a lot better for design anyway. This is all I was trying to point out here. So we can get in here, Control-Shift-B. We can do auto Boolean difference or use a shortcut. I'm going to use a shortcut from here on out for those ones. So I can subtract that, or we could slice it, right? If I'm doing slice, I'll still see that coming up because I just prefer that. But basically, we can do something like this. We can go back to sculpt mode. We can hit R. And you can see we can change the size, remesh it. It might go up really high here for just a second, or it might not. Okay, it didn't really. Now, Blender has a little bug with it right now, where like the remesher here, 0.108, right? But if I go to this side, it might be the same. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it changes dramatically for whatever reason. And it remeshes way too high for no reason. So just be careful with that when you're remeshing, all right? Make sure you're paying attention to that number, not the grid. Anyways, so basically every time we do a Boolean like that, we get something like this, right? So what we can do is just Control R and remesh these real quick. This is also why you might wait to do remesh or smoothing later, because you still got to remesh a number of things possibly. But anyways, with all this done, these pieces we can mesh filter, smooth, and we can like smooth them down a little bit. Alt Q to this one, smooth it down. Alt Q, smooth it down. And we can continue working on this, right? Like we can do a cube, scale it down. And if we want to run hard ops and do a bevel, we can do that. Go into edit mode, we can scale this down, pull that in a little, pull that out. You see? And maybe shift it really far forward on Y and eat away into this, like right here. So now we can do a brush Boolean difference, and it should work. All right. Oops, sorry, brush Booleans are non-destructive. You could technically still use non-destructive Booleans, but they're really hard to move around if you press G. Just keep that in mind. And if you wanted to go in here and edit this or like adjust the bevel, it's going to be really slow, basically. So careful with it. It does work technically, but I'm going to get rid of it. I wanted to adjust this bevel so that was higher resolution. And I'll go back and destructively Boolean it out. You can see it doesn't look that good, right? And this is one of your common problems, at least, with doing bevels in Blender a lot of times, is that you need a quad bevel. And I thought hard ops did those automatically, but maybe they don't. You usually want something like this first. And this is why, once again, design can become kind of problematic. Q settings, shade solid for a sec. Because even with this bevel here, you can see we kind of only are limited on how far we can bevel it. Not really that good of an option, right? So doing those destructively also, Surprisingly, the answer to this is probably not what you thought it was. It's subdivision. So you're still going to create subdivision mesh. Like a lot of people are like, you don't need subdivision. Yeah, you do sometimes. And this is one of those cases where if we just beveled this like this, change the profile shape to 1, it's all quads, guys. It subdivides perfectly fine. So this is going to be more squared up like this, possibly, right? But we could bevel it differently. And you can see I have, I did something goofy there. I don't know what I did. I'm going to reset that real quick. All right. If we bevel it like this whole area is rounded. Okay. Careful with that. If you don't want it rounded, add some loop cuts. Okay. But now it won't round as much, all right, in the middle of those faces. So it'll be a little bit more flat. And When we do the Boolean subtraction, we get that. Simple enough. We wanted it on this side. Before we do that, click, machine tools, Alt-Shift-X. It'll add the mirror modifier. It'll automatically pick the middle object. Boolean subtract, boom. And bool tools will get rid of it. Or excuse me. Yeah, bool tools, sorry. All right, now, so a lot of times when you're trying to do like hard surface sculpting, you're expecting to be able to do things like very cubic in nature like this. It's actually not a better method to sculpt it. Sculpting is better for more organic shapes, generally speaking, and so is subdivision. All right. Now, when you're doing hard edge things, a lot of times Boolean end-on workflows reign supreme for those kinds of things, generally speaking. But it's really hard to get the edges to always work out. And so if you're going to end up trying to go to subdivision at some point anyways, sometimes just modeling something this way and retopoing it is actually more effective than just modeling it from scratch. But it depends on how much detail you got going on and if it's really going to save you time and stuff like that as well. But it could be, something up your alley anyways. Because once you start using voxels, anything's sculptable. Like you can come in here and sculpt any surface you want, but it does take a little bit of practice and understanding on how to do those kinds of things, right? Because we'd have to bevel these all manually in sculpt mode, and that means a lot of finesse sometimes, and that's really not where you want to be with sculpting either, where you're spending all day trying to finesse things. But you see, like if I R, change that number to whatever it needs to be, and then Control R, right? Like smooth will bevel everything at the same rate, which sometimes is okay, but you can see these ones are now just getting more and more smooth. Not always a great thing. But yeah. So like basically smooth tool in very specific areas. Sometimes it's way too strong. You might have to finesse like a little bit at a time. I mean, if it happens, it happens. Like you have to, right? But this is something to keep in mind. Now, you can do a cube. Go into edit mode, stretch it out, bevel it. Hit C, clamps it, mouse wheel it up quite a bit. Okay, add a weld modifier. There's doubles. That's what's going on. So this is a great shape overall, the pill shape. Shift E to duplicate it if you want. Mess around with and do a little bit of practice on, perhaps, like to maybe bring it in here and combine it with this or something. So we can always create the shape first, convert it to a mesh if you want. You can do booleans on this before we even go further. You see, boom. Maybe we add a little cube cut on the edge here. We don't have to always do them uniform scale if you're just doing Boolean, right? This shape's a little in my way. Let's get it out of my way. Put it up here, make it smaller. All right. Oh, we still need it, maybe? I don't know. We can line things up by eyesight. We don't always have to have perfect alignment necessarily while designing. Sometimes it's better not to. If I scale this, we'll get that weird stuff going on. So you got to go into edit mode, move it. And this is the secret to concept design right here. Just using the tools, right? Use them somewhat effectively. Try to have some fun. Maybe we apply this to this one real quick. So you don't have to do a Boolean with this necessarily. You could apply the mirror, grab this and this, and Control J, join them together. Go to sculpt mode, hit R, and you can remesh. Control R. You see? So now when we do this one and do that Boolean subtraction, we get that. But it didn't happen over here. Sculpt mode. You can just come up here. You can do a symmetrize, in our case, positive X and negative X. You can tell by the gizmo up here. All right. And yours will be different. It'll say positive and negative if you hover over it. So now I can just symmetrize it. And there you go. See, that works out pretty well. Later on, we can try smoothing it again or whatever we got to do. But anytime we want to, oh, we might have to remesh it. Might have to smooth it a little. Hopefully I didn't just crash Blender because I tried smoothing while remeshing. I don't know if that does anything. Anyways, apparently not. So now we're in business, all right? We can start doing really crazy concepts this way and have a lot of fun with it. It does not stop here. You can use hard surface alphas on this. You can use stamps. You can use lots of masks and just go crazy sculpting, right? And so A lot of the sculpting tricks I've already kind of gone over on the channel with some of these sculpting tricks, but the main ones that I'm doing are like the snake hook. Can alt Q to different ones if needed. Okay. Snake hook generally works on like one side of the mesh, even if you have symmetry on. You can see like it kind of does this number. And that's okay. But what if you wanted to go all the way through? Well, fall off set to projected will go all the way through the mesh. So I have a snake hook already set up like that. And that's the only difference between these. I call it snake through, or I have grab through, and I have mask through as well. It pulls the whole shape, which is good. That's what so if you ever see me using that, that's what that is. But the rest of the tools are default for the most part, other than trim. The trim tool is the scraper, but it's locked to the normals. So basically, you see the circle, like the direct, like it's how it's on the surface here. It's kind of flat. This will dig into surfaces and preserve that circle direction, basically. You can see it kind of, well, that's not really a great example maybe, but yeah, you see it digs in with that circle going back like that. So that's kind of cool. But a lot of guys want to use like the fill tool, or excuse me, plateau tool. And this one lets you do fun things like this, where it goes up and over an edge. And if we had like a lumpy surface here and we use plateau, we can flatten that back out, right? So that's a fun one to utilize. Now, but what if you didn't want to do that? What if I wanted to like get rid of these and just get, so, you know, we could try scraping it, but a lot of times what you run into is you kind of scrape it too much and you dig a hole or something, you mess up the edge, which could, you know, maybe use that artistically for some reason. But trim, in theory, should be able to get rid of that by just kind of going back and forth over the surface a little bit, very lightly. But it's still a scraper, so it digs into the surface possibly, right? All right, now here's the trick. Set this one to stabilize plane all the way to 1, okay? And then that's what I'm going to call the trim planner. Basically, it behaves like plateau, but it doesn't fill surfaces by default. It just scrapes them. So I can completely chop that off, basically, on that normal, right, and plane. So it doesn't dig into the surface no more is what I'm getting at here. But if we did want to ever raise this up, like you can see, if we just use it, it doesn't do nothing to anything up here. We can hold control. We can do the same thing as the plateau tool, basically, right? So that we can add little accents to our objects like this, possibly, and start to have a little bit of fun with it. Now, if I remesh it real quick, you see it's like kind of terrible. A lot of times, smoothing, just turn the strength down, get in here. Don't go over the edges. Just stay in the middle of these as much as you can. And try to work it a little bit back and forth like you're sanding the surface very lightly. I'm using a pin. I got pin pressure sensitivity strength on, and I'm just pushing like hardly at all. I'm barely pushing, and I'm just going to work it out slightly. If you ever have issues with these kinds of areas, you have to hold control with the like draw sharp here. You can kind of work it back up a little bit, maybe smooth next to it. Okay. Or even plateau it if you wanted to, right up to that edge. Like so. Okay. And then you can remesh it and smooth it and do whatever else you got to do or want to do. And you can see how that works out. This one over here, if I smooth just very lightly, I probably can work it out to be about the same as that area there. I can do little circles, back and forth motions over the top to the bottom. So we can also do bevels, really small bevels this way without having to use mesh filter smooth every time. So we're not doing the whole mesh. But it does take finesse. And that's where usually you mess up with your sculpts, because you think that it's going to be a more automated process. It's not. A lot of times it's very manual work here inside of Blender, at least. And so you have to, you know, kind of approach it as if you're doing just traditional art, like you're a sculptor working in marble almost, you know? I mean, it's a lot more forgiving than that, honestly, but it's kind of a similar mindset that you need to have, that, like, you know, try not to make any mistakes. And you only get one shot, one go at it. And if you ever watch guys working with like chisel and hammer, working in marble, one of the things you'll find is that they actually use pencils a lot of times, kind of sketch on the surface, and then they try to map out what they're going to subtract and like how much, and they start chiseling that away. Using draw sharp here, you could technically go through and kind of like do some markings and things if you wanted to. It probably wouldn't be a big deal. Or you could use maybe the annotation tool and set it to surface perhaps. And you should be able to draw on surfaces with this, or you can use grease pencil and do similar things, right? So some ideas for you if you ever just want to make like little notes on your objects, maybe you can do that. That's in every menu for edit mode, object mode. Um, I've only ran into one issue with that is that sometimes when you reload the Blender file, for whatever reason, it doesn't show up, right? And it's like a bug, or it was a bug. I don't know if they've fixed it, but all right. So we're going through all of this like this now. You know, as far as design goes, right? We'll play more around with design and sculpting, I think. Doing more organic stuff in another video because this one's already at 50 minutes. I know I said I was going to do it here at the start, but the design ideas come down to like form versus function or balancing the two and trying to develop or create interesting shapes and balances of shapes and edge variations. And it's really something you got to practice a lot, but it really helps if you kind of do studies of the things that you want to create, right? So, or things that are similar to the things you want to create. If you start looking at their surfaces, their edges, their repeating details, those kinds of things, like what it needs to actually be that functional thing, right? Like if it's a submarine or something, you know, draw those lines, like load up an image into Photoshop or wherever, study all of the edges and how they're laid out, you know, like look at the edges, look at whether they're beveled or chamfered, how fast they round out and how the surfaces are deformed. Like, are they very smooth or are they more organic kind of curvy surfaces? Or are they more flat panels or like what's going on with them, right? You start looking at details, right? And big overall forms, you'll have a much better time with most everything you're going to ever work on. If you can hit that big shape first, a lot of times it's more subtractive in nature where you take things away. Sometimes you add things, but the idea is you create something like a main body first, and then you add a bunch of detail on it as sub-objects. Or you can add subtractions to prepare for sub-objects, because any of these little places like this, you can always model something new in these areas and go to town, right? So if we had to create some kind of handle here, you know, maybe we do. Maybe we got to do that. But we could figure out, you know, like what's an interesting shape here for a handle that opens this thing up, and maybe we add some like little spots for fingers or something like that in here. Maybe it's, you know, like some things like this going on or something, right? Some kind of setup like that. Maybe we subdivide it, make it smooth. You know, there's all kinds of fun things we can do here, but that's where you go crazy, basically. You keep adding more and more detail as needed, where needed. So you detail your details, basically, at some point as well, which is a whole nother... probably a time lapse would help with that, I think, but lots of stuff to do. Not hard, but it's just lots of stuff to do. Takes time. Detail and details, right? It's just like pulling this edge up a little here, doing a little bit of bevel there. Maybe I bevel the whole thing now. You know, little things here and there, they all start to add up. This is how you create that interest that you're looking for. Put a screw in there or something. Fluctuate the surface to planar levels, just up and down, layer them up and down quite dramatically and heavily, and you'll have a lot of fun with that. So we could definitely add, you know, that kind of minor stuff all over the place. A lot of times you guys, when you see me sculpting things, I just want to kind of cover this because I know I said I was going to talk about sculpting more, but a lot of times it's just an organic shape for the most part. And so I'm just pulling shapes out, and I probably should smooth that a bit before I create a really bad error. All right, and let's make it lower res so it smooths faster. Scrape it. All right, let's get something going here. So a very simple shape like this, you know, you can do some very basic edits to it, like inflating it, remeshing it, whatever you got to do. You scrape it a little bit. So we're creating more of an organic shape when we're just flattening the surface, basically. All right. And that same process we were just doing is part of that hard surface sculpting, like doing the booleans, right? We can bump it up at some point if we need to. Maybe sharpen these up a little bit more. Smooth those down because it looks crazy. Sometimes you can do scrapes really soft and just go through and knock things back a little bit and then use a smooth tool to refine it, basically. So those more organic type of things like this, they're not really that much different than what we were just doing, like with boolean in-gon, right? We can come in here, we can use like mask through. And if I want to change something, I can invert. I can scale. I can move it. You can see we can do all kinds of fun stuff like this, and we can rotate things, right? Let's pull that way far back. You get the idea? So this is the whole idea of sculpting it, right? R, Control R, clear the mask, A, clear. Mesh filters, smooth. We lose our sharp edges a little bit. We can always try to sharpen them back up, perhaps, but we're just trying to create a mix of chamfered or flat surfaces and curved surfaces. That's all this is, okay? We're just trying to figure out that balance there for this and how we're going to do it, you know? So all right. And that's part of the design tricks, right? Like we're just getting started with this. I mean, we could do so much more. Talking about patterns and flows and all that, but we're trying to figure out how to make this work here. And sometimes we just don't get the option to do like a new shape in a boolean, so we have to finesse it together. All right. We can do things like that. We can also use trim tools. I'm going to use line trim for just right now, but basically trim, hit F if you need to. You'll see it cuts all that off. You can make it only to the line segment. Or cut it like that if you want, I guess. So we can do that. Base sets, we can turn them off real quick. So we can flatten that whole area out. So a nice variation of flat and curved areas, basically. You see? You can also do them at weird angles sometimes. See how it works out. Okay. Now, remesh, however you need to. I'll take it up a little bit. Mesh filter, smooth it, bring it down. This is a perfect mesh to basically retopo if you needed to. But we can always do more craziness with this. Obviously, we can do like mesh cube. And I already know someone's going to say it, and so I'm going to address it real quick. Why do all this in Blender when you can do this in plasticity, right? Like you can model anything in plasticity, and it's fairly easy. So, and because like we're still going to have to possibly retopo this stuff, so why not use that software? You can use the software, it's fine. And you'll know for these kinds of things, I like to use that turbo smooth modifier. I showed how to make it in another video. But Control Shift B, slice. Okay. Scale, move it in. You see where we're going with this kind of workflow? We could do things like that, maybe. Or we can continue just slicing it up. I gotta see that edge. I don't know where I'm at with it. Okay, let's just use a cube right at the bottom of it. Okay. Sometimes it won't slice. You just gotta be careful. It just won't happen, or it won't do a Boolean subtraction or something. But you can use the other software. It's fine. You're probably going to do like an export of a high and an export of a low, and you're going to clean up the low, and you're going to probably remesh the high possibly, or take it to ZBrush or whatever you end up doing. But there's nothing wrong with that workflow. I think this is a little bit more creative and free to work this way. And so I prefer being able to sculpt the surfaces. Although plasticity is added some pretty cool tools recently, like in December, last December anyways. So it's valid. I mean, it's a valid tool. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm at this point though where I'm tired of picking up new tools and I just kind of want to work on why is this smooth acting weird? What's going on here? Okay, I guess I didn't remesh it. I'm wondering how those are locked up. Do I have oh, face set boundaries is on, okay. So I had face sets, that's what it was. Anyways, you can use whatever software tools you want. You want to go to ZBrush instead of doing this in Blender, you can do that. A lot of guys work like this in ZBrush or similar anyways, and then they remesh it, Z-remesh it, and then clean up that, turn it into perfect quads. So it's the same idea as retopo almost. But yeah, you can do this all day. You can have a lot of fun with it. It's really that simple. It's that fun. And there's nothing to it really. I mean, yeah, just play around with your tools here. Try to have a little bit of fun with them. That was too much. Destructive booleans are the greatest, I think. The only thing is, like, certain times you'll have a hard time, like with areas like this, possibly. We might have an error here, actually. Now I'm seeing it. Oh no, you see it remeshed at 5 million. This is that bug I was talking about, 0.004, 0.05 over here. I don't know why it does that. So you gotta be careful, basically. It goes too high on one side and hopefully we're not that high again. Oh, we're a little bit lower. That's nice. The higher it goes, when you smooth, if it's already kind of smooth, you don't destroy the edges quite as fast. But everything gets slower, and it's harder to work with the mesh sometimes. But it might look nicer. Not always, but sometimes. Well, a lot of times it does. And then later on, if we did a retopo, we'd correct this issue here. When doing the subdivision mesh, if we had to. But the process continues now, guys, right? So the sculpt tools, you know, play around with them, get used to them. Hard surface sculpting is not what you think it is. It's more about doing the organic stuff than it is about doing anything a hard surface. With exception to maybe Z twice will let you use local, okay? Or same with Y. But a lot of times, yeah, that's what it comes down to, is that it's you're gonna be doing a lot of booleans still. Playing around with shapes, trying to get them all lined up just right, creating cool designs. And you want to save any tedious kind of slow stuff for like the polishing phase, which we're not really at on something like this yet, right? Trying to get the big stuff going first. Eventually you end up on a mesh like this, and you can do like the regular mask tool, no pressure sensitive strength. Turn it full strength here. We can go back in later and start masking and like hit Shift S if you want. Get cleaner kind of lines here. You can also use Lazy Nizumi if you have it for brush smoothing. And you can Alt E and try different strokes, lines, or dots, or whatever. This is what you all probably came for, that hard surface sculpting part. There's a very clever way of finessing all this to get super high detailed models that you could potentially bake, but you have to practice it. Like, you might need a single stroke all the way through here with very little rockiness to it in order to get like a nice hard edge look, which is a little bit more challenging than you probably think. It's also polishability. You can like do some 2D tricks. This works in 2D software where you smooth it, turn auto off. A is the pie menu for this, by the way, right? You smooth it, make it really soft. A, increase contrast, turn it back down, and you'll get this kind of setup. This is how blurry the edge is going to be, basically. But now we A, invert, mesh filter. We can inflate if we wanted, push it down. Could do something like that, maybe, right? But we're going to have a very janky, hard edge around here, okay? So more resolution might help stop that to some degree, but usually smoother masks work better for that reason. And then you can also move. Once again, under sculpt, set pivot to under cursor, right click that, add it to a shortcut. You'll be able to move it around. So you can do things like move now. All right. You can scale and you can rotate. So that's why you got to be able to set that pivot, because now we can rotate it down from here, or we could do it from over here. See what's going on? Maybe just a little bit. Hold shift while doing that. So while we could do this like this, and you can wind it up like a clock if needed, we can easily do this with a boolean too, right? So I mean, the option's up to you, what kind of result you want and how you want to work with things, but there's not always a reason to always sculpt it, right? I didn't like the scale when that went in. I just think a push down like this might work better. And it's a little tricky to work these areas out in this area. Personally, what I do is just apply it. Or press A, clear the mask, and then I'll remesh to whatever I need it to remesh at. I think I went pretty low there, though. All right. I did. Let's not go that low. You have to change the resolution each time. If you use the exact same resolution, you're going to develop like little dots all over your model. It doesn't look that good. But there's all kinds of different ways you could possibly approach fixing this little issue here with like using mesh filter and stuff like that. I think just the regular smooth tool, low strength, right? I think this works pretty well, personally, but you got to stay inside the lines, okay? You can smooth the lines out later with the mesh filter if you need to. Just very light strength, go through, get it going. Take your time. You know, a lot of guys try to rush art too much. I think it's all like supposed to be like super, super fast because they heard it somewhere on YouTube. Not really. There's times to be fast, there's times to be slow. When you're doing finesse work, that's when you're going to be slow, right? So you try to get a majority of the model going as fast as you can, perhaps. But then at a certain point, you're just going to take your time elsewhere. So like areas like this smooth tool might not do so well in this area. You can mask it. Oh, let me turn Shift S off and change it back to spacing. You know, I have to jump around a lot between the tools sometimes too. Not always a great thing. So something like this, A, invert it, mesh filter, smooth. Sometimes big surface areas, it's better to do this than trying to use a smooth tool. If we smooth it a little bit like this, it's going to change the curve here a little bit. You got to be aware of that. You can kind of see it did okay though, right? So now the regular smooth tool, we work the edges of where that mask was. And that'll work out a little bit better. But anytime we got to fix something like this down here, you know, we can do that, but we got to take our time on it and do it. That's all. Plateau in this case should probably work. So knowing your tools and what they're capable of doing will help you decide which ones to use when and where, right? Because like you can see, this chews away a little bit into that surface. Not really the end of the world if it does that. Sometimes it's good to maybe like flatten that out down there a little bit. Because we can just come back in here and smooth on top of that area now, perhaps, right? And if we can't, for whatever reason, we can use something like clay strips, very low strength, hold control. We can try working these things out. I think I got something else going on here. Let's remesh it first. Sometimes your geo might not be letting you work it as best as you can. So you have to remesh it because it might smooth weird if it has like weird poles and stuff. Yeah, so using like clay strips in here or even the draw tool, low strength. A lot of times you can kind of push surfaces around a tiny, tiny little bit, but this is a real finesse job here, all right? You can easily mess up your model. And the goal with this one is to keep it moving. Don't do it like in one area, okay? You're like sanding or polishing the surface manually, basically. You should be able to start working it out a little. And usually if you want everything to be a little bit more average together, you use it bigger, okay? So you might change the sizes frequently. These are a lot of like 2D brush techniques, basically, that you use while doing 3D, okay? Nobody would know or be any of the wiser, and if you retop on it wouldn't matter if it was completely perfect anyway. So, I mean, we can end up with some fairly clean results this way. And the idea is just to create something to get it going, so that way we can actually, well, do things with it, you know, start working it out into more interesting things later on, perhaps, and just have a little bit of fun with it, you know? Make it all more interesting. Anyways, that's an hour and 11 minutes of just kind of going crazy, I guess, for a second. And later on, you might combine things as well. I mean, it's always a possibility to go crazy. And some of these can possibly be combined or boolean from each other as well. I mean, the booleans take longer when you have two dense meshes going, but it certainly is a possibility. So you could end up with some really crazy designs because of that stuff you normally would not be doing with polymodeling software, guys. And that's the point of this this video, is just to show you like how you really should be approaching this. Like no subdivision, no polymodeling, no Boolean workflow, no sculpting. That's all modeling. That's all modeling tools. And you can use them and play with them off of each other. There's times that you can combine them basically. And the subdivision and Booleans and standard modeling all kind of work similar in a way. Or you should be using them in a similar fashion. Voxel meshes are really the big outlier. And the only way to convert from this back to a decent mesh is to do retopo. Okay. But that's the bridge. And I've said that in previous videos. That is the bridge. You can work this way all day long if you want. But you have to, at some point, or more than likely you will have to remesh it, right? Retopo it. Or you could try remeshing it. I mean, that might work as well, because I'm pretty sure these, as long as you smooth them down a little bit, quad remesher using just normal setup here with shade smooth, no sharps on it, uncheck sharps, and symmetry if needed. Quad remesher will remesh a lot of this with the voxel setup, but it's oftentimes slow to kind of get going, and you might have to decimate it first. And B, it tends to do this right here. You see the diagonals? Not really that great of a result. So it still has like artifacts in here, and they end up softer. Even if you were to increase the resolution here, let's say like 20, it's probably still going to get that wrong. And on top of that, it's going to start picking up the little issues in the mesh itself. So it's not really like it's going to work out. So that means manual retopo usually. See? Starts to look a little bit more questionable, perhaps. Well, one thing you can do with it that's kind of cool, though, is like you can remesh this pretty high if you wanted to. Maybe once or twice or so. Go to sculpt mode. Mesh filter. You can also do a big relax across the whole surface. Sometimes this helps it out a little bit. Makes it look a little bit nicer, perhaps, as far as like those edges go. Not always does it, but you do this once, subdivide it a couple times, you got a dense mesh again. You can also try smoothing it. There's a lot of little tricks like this, right? There's all kinds of ways of working with mesh and geometry. And we do that once and we remesh it again. It might come out a little bit nicer. It's a possibility. But it's going to be softer now. You see? Worked out a little bit nicer. But softer. So you know, it's kind of a hit or miss with quad remesh sometimes, but the main ideas here still stick. I think they work out pretty well. That you can do a lot of things like this. And just see what you can do with them. Doing a non-uniform scale on all of them at the same time. It's not usually a great thing to do, but I just wanted to see if I can get it to fit in here. Oh, you know what we could try real quick? Make it fit in there? We'll see if it works. I'm pretty sure hard ops will do this, but I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. We're going to add a lattice modifier with hard ops. So Q, lattice. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. And we can increase segment count. A little like this. We move this. None of these move. So let's grab all of it real quick. We'll rotate it into place. So lattice is also a valid option, but it's going to be really slow with a dense mesh, just so you know. All right. But we should be able to get in here and squish all of it now with the lattice. But we Alt-Z, grab the middle. We can deform it. Maybe we take this one and scale it. Move it back. Scale it down more. Okay, so our lattice, we could probably increase twice here. So we can change the curve. Ah, there you go. So, guys, don't be afraid of 3D modeling software. There's a lot to learn, but once you understand it, some of these things, it's really not that bad. It's a lot of fun. I can pull this down and do that. That's kind of cool. This became too not cylindrical, that little hole. Let's just pull that one forward. So the more we add in here, we could probably preserve some of these shapes along the way, but you can see it got a little bit wobbly here for some reason. All right, let's not do that. Let's move it forward on Y. And we can also do things like this, where we pull like these top ones up, or flatten them out even. Looks very warped now, though, but I think you get the idea, right? It's not just about subdivision model, or excuse me, sculpting. It's about all of it. Can all work together, right? This is how you're going to find your shapes, your designs, and it's a good way of working ultimately, I think. Plasticity just added something like that, I think, right? The lattice, I'm pretty sure they did, which is cool for plasticity. Or they added proportional edit. One of those two is something like that they just added. Hour and 18 minutes now, guys. So I'm going to end this one here. Hopefully you learned a little bit. Rotate in object mode so that we can press Y twice and use that rotation. Okay. See? We can always try doing some different stuff in here. As far as shapes go anyways, right? All right. And I'm just going to change the color. See if we can get some better scheming going on here. That's not that much better, is it? Trying to figure out how to balance. There's a lot of detail here, so it's like kind of basic back there. I was figuring we could go dark here, keep this really bright, and that would balance better. That's where you get into playing around with some design fundamentals, maybe. And if that's the case, this one here at the front should probably be the same color. But you kind of get where it's going now. Like, you're free to do, you know, like you're rotate this in object mode too. A lot of times you go into object mode to rotate. So all I want to do here is just pull this edge up on Z twice. Can work it a little bit nicer. Bevel it. Boolean subtract. Yes, it's going to take a while because that's apparently a 5 million triangle mesh. That's usually, yeah, there you go. It's going to take a little bit. Let's remesh that. Oh, 2 million apparently. Still highs. I knew it was high, but I didn't know it was that high. You can work with them higher than that. There's been plenty of instances where I've gone much, much higher. But it gets really slow sometimes, right? Oh, we don't want 100,000. We want like 1 million is nice, usually. There you go. That's good enough for me. Let's go ahead and symmetrize it. This will be the last time I do this, and then we'll end the video. I promise. I keep saying I'm going to end it, right? And I just keep going. It's like fishing, you know? It's like the next cast. Smooth it instead. There you go. Got something kind of going. One more cast, guys, right here. I just want to trim that off right there. Okay. And we'll do one more right here. Now, here's another little food for thought. Could you do this just straight from the gate with subdivision modeling, right? Could you like free model something like this and come up with something? The answer is yes, you can. Once you get good enough subdivision, you can. It's not super easy necessarily, but it would eat up about the same amount of time that we just did working on this. You can do it about in the same amount of time once you get good enough with it. You probably won't do your holding edges right away, though. Might add those in later. And it can be tricky as well. So like it does take a lot of skill to do that. So if you've ever seen someone doing it before, in a time lapse or something, you know, it's a doable thing, right? Personally, I like this because I'm not worried about fighting topology too much, just like Substance Modeler. I mean, this is fun over here. I mean, you can just absolutely go crazy with it. Start creating, you know, things that look interesting at a very primitive level. And then you start figuring out how to add, you know, all kinds of little buttons and plugs and batteries and whatever else you got to make it a functioning, workable thing, right? You know, try to make it a little bit more than a functionable laptop and it'll work out. Anyways, so hard surface sculpting, guys, not what you probably think it is. That's all that I was going to say. We're going to do a lot of sculpting. It's not really what you think it is, though. It's about creating a base mesh that you can use for later as a reference. Retopo on it, maybe. Sometimes you can bake them, depending on how high you push it and if it meets the needs of your high to low bake. But and you might do like details with remesh and sculpting that you put on like other mesh that you might bake as well. So there's all kinds of weird things that can happen. Personally, I think these need to combine, but or something needs to happen here with that transition, so it doesn't look that good, right? So we could definitely figure out a way to do that, but for now, it's okay-ish. Maybe we switch that up a little bit. All right. Okay. Anyways, that's it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe. Ask me any questions in the or ask me questions in the comments. What you want to see next? Is I try to take it into consideration, right? And I might actually do a video on it. It happens, all right? Can't see it now though. You see, like if it was a dark material, it just looks like a hole there. You can't really see it anymore. So it doesn't look maybe as good as it could. Let's apply a scale real quick. So chamfer is more correct, maybe? Okay. Yeah, that little detail where you have like a little chamfer on one edge looks pretty good usually. A lot of times you can add like little sections that come up at the bottom, but I'm not going to do that right now. There you go. Something a little bit more interesting, maybe. I don't like this front piece here. There's definitely more we could do to this. It's kind of just so. But you can imagine this being like the thigh of a leg or something, right? Like it could be a cool piece like that. You'd have to add a cylinder type shape, maybe. For a joint there. Yeah, that might make it look a little bit nicer too. Make it that same color even right there. There we go. Look a little bit more official. So I gotta have to detail this thing and add cuts and whatever else we got to do to it. I mean, there's tons of stuff we can do here. You know? And remember, this modifier is angle based. Oh, that is not working out very well, is it? There, we'll leave it soft like everything else. All right, that helps that little area out, I think. But basically, yeah, we could add so much more to this to make it so much nicer. We don't have to leave it all half done. But that's solid as far as like getting a thing going like this. So you make little shapes like this relatively fast. Put a little time into them. You can kind of kit bash them together, see what it is you actually want to make, and then you go through and you make a proper model of this. And at the end of the day, you got a proper model, right? And you can start thinking about converging your designs here and trying to make things more appropriate like that as well. But you're thinking about all these edges and how they flow with each other. And that's hard to do while modeling, right? It really is. That's why drawing is so important, I think. It's fast with it, like this kind of stuff is easy. You go to town. I keep telling you guys to practice just sketching napkin sketches. Don't even worry if you're like a crazy good artist or something. Because what takes us a minute just to model over there, we can use some brush smoothing over here. We'll use, Krita in similar fashion to what we were just doing in sculpting. If we're going to shade it and everything. But what I'm talking about is like changing Shift S, right, to add stabilizer. Well, in Krita, you set up shortcuts to use dynamic brush tool and you get brush smoothing. Your regular brush, you have no brush smoothing, so you can just switch between them. right? And then basically no brush smoothing, done, right? Yeah, so we can figure out all kinds of breakups in here, have a lot of fun, and just keep going to town. It's not really that crazy, I think. Just trying to think of like how I'd break this area up, maybe. So you can do like parallel edges through. A converging detail there, maybe like a triangle, or I don't know. Maybe just do like a vent here, or we can add these shapes together. Then we could do like an inset. Push the surface down. This is where you get your mind together on all this. Right? Do a pill here. Make a couple pills in different kind of patterns. Right? Maybe do a big one up here. This is a small one down here. We've already got two kind of at a diagonal like that. So if we do any more pill shapes, maybe we put them vertical or in the opposite direction. See where I'm going with this? We could put like some support structure through here or something. Maybe we do that. Usually things try to load the weight down to the base of something, but I like you think of like the way buildings are constructed when doing things like that, but we got a lot of subshapes going on now. It's getting a little bit noisy. And so you can kind of kill that effect. I'll just give you a quick example. Like maybe all of this was combined together and painted the same color with the same material, right? So when you do that, it's not as noisy looking now. I mean, it's still noisy, but it feels more uniform. And then down here, this is going to be recessed. Maybe it's pushed in quite heavily, so it gets really dark. But it doesn't have to be like black or gray or whatever we're using right now. It could be like white. If it's got heavy contrast on it, it would still look dark like that, right? Maybe that happens down here too. And we'll just leave the other little section white for now, I guess. Or we'll do a light gray so we can see it. I'm going to trace all of this. Just fill it. Boom. There you go. My fill bucket's set to grow by 1, so that'll work out like that. But basically, you kind of get the ideas here. Like we can get through here and make things happen, basically. That a little smaller. It's the same concept of working in Blender with sculpts. You see how it's changing the base colors, right? This is all we're doing here. We're changing base color, more or less. We're not worried about detail. Well, I mean, we're kind of like detailing at the same time, but we're not worried. We're not worried about this. It's fun. It's not hard to do once you get used to your modeling tools, your drawing tools, and digital software, at least. It becomes very fluent. Like you just have a lot of fun with it. Get some interest going. If I want a surface to pop up, usually I'll shade it a little bit lighter, so I know it's going up. Something like that. And if it goes down, I might make it a little bit darker. I'll just fill those. Yeah. You can add shading, lighting, and stuff if you want. Clean this up, make it larger, make nice line art and all that. But for a little thumbnail, like a loose sketch, napkin sketch, whatever you want to call it, having something like this first before you even try to attempt to model or sculpt something, way more useful. It doesn't take very long to do. And a lot of pros do this on the regular, so it's not really, it's nothing crazy. Like really nice looking art sometimes starts so rough looking, it's crazy. Like the process of doing it's not crazy, but if you knew that artists are starting this way, you would be like, man, it's crazy, man. All right. Anyways, you already said all the, subscribe stuff. So I'll check you guys out in the next one. All right. Take care.